Hey everybody, welcome back to Levi's Pop Culture Cave here, and today I'm going to be bringing you guys a review of the latest movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, Black Widow. For those of you who don't know, Black Widow was one of the mainstay characters on Marvel Cinematic Universe, played by Scarlett Johansson, and this is her first and probably only movie that they're gonna make about her, sadly. But basically, it's a midquel. It's like a midquel and a prequel at the same time, because it's set during Civil War, but at the same time it's before like the events of like Infinity War and all that. So it kind of falls in that category. But the plot of the movie basically follows Natasha as she's on the run from Thaddeus Ross after Sokovia Accords and the events of Civil War, and she's basically drawn back into her old life, which is the Red Room, which trained her, and she's trying to come to terms with her past with her old family, which were her adopted sister Yelena, her adopted dad Alexei, and her adopted mom Melina, who were both KGB agents, posing as regular parents. But really, it's just her coming to terms with what's happened to her in her life and trying to stop the Red Room from creating any more Black Widows. And really, that's the plot of the movie in a nutshell. And as far as movies go in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I actually thought this was a pretty good movie. I didn't think it was. I mean, there was a lot of people that are saying, "Oh, this is bad. It's a really bad movie." No, I don't think it's a bad movie whatsoever. To give it a plus side, I think it's cool to see Black Widow get her own movie, even though it's kind of too late at the same time. But at the same time, I think Scarlett Johansson knocks it out of the park. I think she could always handle her own movie, and it's nice to see her finally get the role. And I think this movie does a decent job with actually giving the character depth. And there's actually a lot of scenes where you learn more about Natasha's character, and I think it just adds to the personality and everything. Scarlett Johansson just does a phenomenal job of portraying this character. And you meet her sister, played by named Yelena, played by Florence Pugh, I think that's her name, and she's phenomenal. And she's supposed to be like the new Black Widow going forward. And I thought she was fantastic. I thought she was a lot of fun, and she had great chemistry with Scarlett Johansson. And you also had the dad, Alexei, who was called the Red Guardian, played by David Harbour. He was probably my favorite character in the entire movie. He was a lot of fun. And then you had Melina, played by Rachel Weisz. She was also really good. And one thing I have to say about the movie in general is that I do like the dynamics that are set up in this movie. I like the relationship between these characters. It feels like real family relationships. And I think the overall theme of the movie, it's actually not really preachy. I'm not going to spoil what it's really about, but I don't think they do a ham-fisted job of shoving it down your throat and everything. I think it's very natural how the plot goes forward, and it's a great showing for Scarlett Johansson. But the action scenes for like any Marvel movie are great. They're fantastic for the most part. I especially like the ending scene like I said, there's going to be spoilers in this review. So if any of you want to stop watching it, stop right now. But I really like the ending scene where they're blown up out of the Red Room and they're starting to slide down these panels, and I thought that was really, really well done. And most of the action scenes are well done. That's one of probably the best things about the Marvel movies, is that they're some of the best action movies around. And the only real complaint I have to say there's two complaints I really have to say about this movie. And they are big ones in a way, because I think that they waited way too long to give Black Widow her own movie. Way, way too long. Especially, spoilers, if you know what happens during Infinity War. Not Infinity War, but Endgame, where she sacrifices herself. It kind of makes this movie pointless in a way, because it's basically filler. That's all it is. It's filler. There's nothing really adding up to it. The only real scene in the entire movie that leads to anything is the after credit scene. And I'm not going to spoil what that is, but that's the only scene in the movie that really leads to anywhere else in the Marvel Universe. And like, it would have been fine if this movie released like a couple years ago or like a decade ago. It would have been fine. It would have been awesome. But I think they waited too long to give her her own movie. And it's just a shame because, like I said, Scarlett Johansson knocked it out of the park. She is the Black Widow. The same thing as like Hugh Jackman is Wolverine. She owns the character, and it's just the same. She's probably only going to get one movie. And my second main problem with the movie is the fact that the twist with the Taskmaster and the overall villain. Okay, for those of you who don't know, the Taskmaster is a villain in Marvel Comics who basically his main thing is that he can mimic anybody. He can mimic like Iron Man, Spider-Man. He can mimic all their moves and everything. He's actually a pretty cool villain. He's made a couple appearances here and there, like in the Spider-Man video game. I think he's been in a couple of the cartoons, but this is like the first live-action appearance of Taskmaster, and it's just boring. There's really nothing to this character. There's nothing that really distinguishes it. I mean, spoilers, but the twist of the movie is that Taskmaster is the guy who runs the Red Room. Taskmaster is his daughter that Black Widow supposedly killed, and the guy turned her into Taskmaster. And there's really not a lot of depth given to the character. I mean, that's one thing. And the villain, too, and he's played by Ray Winstone. There's not a lot of depth given to the character. A lot of it's like, oh, he's such a bad guy. He's such a bad guy. Okay, that's fine and good, but if you don't give us a reason, if you don't show us why he's such a bad guy, you can tell us all day long, but it's not going to do anything. It's not like he's built up for like a couple movies, like Thanos was. Thanos was built up for a couple movies where you saw like people talk about him and it built up what a menace he was, and then you saw him in Infinity War. This guy's only in this movie. That's it. The guy who's the head of the Red Room, he's boring. He's just a generic bad guy, and that's all he is. And it's just a shame is that when you get to the end of the movie and you learn about Taskmaster and the head of the Red Room, and sorry I forget the guy's name, but I remember he's played by Ray Winstone, they're just such disappointing villains, especially considering Marvel has done a better job recently with their villains, like the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, and then you had Thanos, Josh Brolin, and then you had Mysterio, played by Jake Gyllenhaal. And it's just a shame that it just feels like this movie is just filler. And it's a shame because it's not a bad movie whatsoever. I still think it's a lot of fun, and I still think it's worth checking out. But at the same time, I wish it was made a couple years earlier. That way it would have more of an impact. Especially concerning like where you see the Marvel Universe heading, especially with shows like Loki, WandaVision, and with like Doctor Strange coming out next year. It just feels out of place. But like I said, I enjoyed the movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. I mean, I don't think it's as bad as people are making it out to be. I still think it's a good final send-off for Scarlett Johansson. And at least she got her own movie. And like I said, she owns the character. But like I said, if you guys are curious about the movie, I highly recommend you check it out. And I will be bringing you guys more movie reviews in the future. And if you guys like the channel, hit subscribe. And I will see you again soon.